lot of my learnings as well. Bit of background on Phil, because this is about her. I can't do the running, so she did. So Phil is from West Cork, which is different than Cork, I'm told. So she's from Ballyneen. Closest, I suppose, big town would be Bandon, where she went to school. Phil was a multidisciplinary sports person growing up, so played GA, basketball, did athletics, but was probably following in the footsteps of her sister Joan, who was equally as talented at sprinting, a few years ahead of her at the time, and started concentrating on athletics after 16. Phil started nursing then in college, which we'll get into a little bit later. Not exactly conducive, I suppose, when you think of, you know, a career path, but we'll cover that. So I'm basically converted to a HDip in computing and then a master's in WAT, which she just finished. She's a 3-time national record holder over 1, 2 indoor, and she also holds the 300 indoor best time. She's also an ambassador for women in IT in the Southeast. And up to this year, there's now a moratorium, obviously, with everything that's going on, but she's currently ranked 29th out of possible 56 Olympic spots for the 200 meters for Tokyo. And that kicks back open again from December. So Phil, just an important point to note, Phil really only started excelling in athletics in her final year of secondary school. Didn't make All-Ireland finals, you know, didn't medal. There was no European youths. There was no, you know, none of the, I suppose, maybe the things that maybe, you know, kids perceive that they need to be. Don't get me wrong, it's brilliant. If you make European youth, by all means, that is brilliant. It's a great experience. But Phil didn't. That wasn't her path. And she only started competing properly for Ireland at the European Juniors in 2013, where she came fourth. Two kind of quotes that probably relevant and kind of help to give you an insight into how I think, I suppose, a little bit. First one is from I suppose, a renowned coach for many reasons, so we won't get into it, but it's not the job of the scientist to tell me how to train. It is the job of the scientist to explain why. After that, me as a coach, refined through experience, I will figure out what actually works day in, day out. So that's basically say coaching is about taking sound principles and then figuring out, because like sports science and literature and papers, they do the research, right? But as coaches, we know that you know, what's written in papers and doesn't necessarily always mean that if you have a group of 6 athletes that you can associate that academic study to them and get the same results. That's not true. Okay, so you coach what's in front of you, and through experience you figure out how to do that. And then secondly, you know, speed trumps perfection. Everyone's afraid of making a mistake. The greatest error is not to move, to be paralyzed by the fear of failure. I think as coaches, we have to go all in. I think being afraid of making mistakes or failing, of course, we don't want to fail. Nobody wants to fail. You don't want your athlete to lose. You don't want your athlete to not progress. But the biggest lessons that I've had is by just doing it and learning from failures. And I'll go into some of those later on. Just a little bit what, like, when I presented this before, not this presentation, but sometimes it's good to put down on paper why you coach, because there's days where you go, why am I coaching? But we get over that quickly enough, right? So look, bottom line for me is, when I was an athlete, I wanted to win. When I played Gaelic, I wanted to win. You always want to win. Everybody wants to win, right? And for me, I'll be relentless in the pursuit of winning. That's not to mean I'll do, you know, unethical things, or I won't do the right thing. Like, it's not that. It's the energy that I bring to it. It's that I won't stop seeking, and it's not perfection, because perfection doesn't exist. But the better myself as a coach, you can't ever stop that journey. Secondly, I want to help athletes and players be the best that they can be in and out of the sport. You know, myself and Phil did something this week for the EBS, recognizing you know, coaches and people that give up their free time for all the sporting clubs around Ireland, and I was asked why should we recognize these people, these volunteers in sport? And I was like, well, one thing that sticks with me is that as a kid, I was brought around Ireland to races and training by a coach, and I could never get my head around how this person could put so much time into me, their own free time. And it's something that always stuck with me, and I always got that to point number 4, this pay it back or pay it forward. That it's just something that stuck with me, that I felt that, well, if somebody could do that for me, then I can do that for somebody else, you know. And the third thing I do, you have to create a performing environment. You have to create an environment for your athletes that they're happy in, and that they want to come to training and they want to get better. And just I like this picture on the right just because it looks kind of cool, but this was myself and Phil walking to the World Indoor semi-final in 2007, whenever that big snow came and people couldn't get in, and the minibuses stopped running to the indoor arena, and we were literally holding on to each other to not fall off the bridge. It was icy. It was just what you see, what you don't see, I suppose, behind the scenes is like that was a 3 or 4 kilometer walk in a kind of a blizzard to a World Indoor semi-final, and somebody was walking behind us. I'd only saw it later on social media, took this picture, and I think it just captures a really good picture of what coaching athletes are. And we're heading to the biggest race of her career at the time, and we were having to crack, trying not to fall. Very important as coaches, I think you need to build a network. You need to steal as well, and by steal I mean like take what's good about what figure out why people do certain things and then steal it, right? And here's just a list of people that I'm not going to go through all of them, but like I've learned an awful lot from my time with both as an athlete and after and being an athlete, I suppose, as a coach with the Harrisons, who were, for me, I suppose, like their knowledge of speed endurance, I suppose, would be something that I would have taken away with me. And I was lucky to be coached by Sean Whitney as an athlete with regards to strength and conditioning. I think a lot of people know Ralph. He's a fantastic German expert on speed and acceleration. Gabe Sanders, through my work in IT, I travel a lot to America, and I just knocked on doors in universities where a lot of good coaching happens, and I built up a very good relationship with Gabe Sanders, who was coached in Boston University and in Stanford in California. Emma Gallivan, who's just top physio, and has been Phil's physio from a junior the whole way up, and who FaceTimed me during lockdown to pop Phil's dislocated shoulder back in. So that's how good she is. Stephen Barrett, who we came across in our time in WIT, who's a fantastic sports physiologist, nutritionist, coach, and he's currently coaching with AG2R Mondial. Through the Tour de France, he's off to the Giro d'Italia, and he really helped open a lot of doors for me anyway, and for Phil, through just his knowledge of just energy systems. Okay, Steve McGuire, again, another Irish coach who's gone on to very big things within the world of UK athletics, brought Jason Smith to the lofty heights that he's been at and is still competing as well. Jeremy Lyons, who's my sparring partner, who formed the Dublin Sprint Club with his co-coaches, Aidan Sinnott and Ger O'Donnell. They're doing brilliant stuff up in Dublin. And James Hillier, who is Leon Reed's coach, and who's done a few workshops over here for us, is just a brilliant, simplifies the complicated, which James does, is really, really good. They're just some of the influences on me. I'm not going to go into this. I like this slide, and I throw it in. I said to Jeremy one day when I saw it on Twitter, I said, I'm going to throw this into any presentation I do because it's just so relevant to anything we do in life. It's literally, how do you get to success, right? Or how do you change to get to success? And to me, this shows there's 5 things. You need vision, you need skills, you need incentives, you need resources, you need an action plan. You take out either of those and you can see what the impact, right? You take out vision, you've got confusion. What are we training for, right? You take out skills, so like training sloppy, there's no structure to training, you're not doing blocks, you're a sprinter, so there's going to be, anxiety. Then there's no incentives, right? So again, and this is what, a lot of people might have felt throughout lockdown, right? What are we training for? There's no races, okay? There's no incentives, okay? So you get resistance, and some people don't want to train. So you can see what happens very quickly there. So you got to make up incentives. You got to put in, look, there's light at the end of the tunnel. We're going to do time trials. We're going to get better at this, blah, blah, blah. Resources, again, with no tracks sometimes, you know what I mean? Things get shut down. This could happen again in the future. We don't know. There's such an uncertainty. So, but we got to just, as coaches, remain calm and figure out alternatives, and I'll go into that a little bit. So you're going to get frustration as well, and then you need a plan. If you don't have a plan, a start and a finish, you're going to have a lot of false starts. Real quickly, yeah, just my coaching journey. Like I said, I'm 20 years coaching. Some highlights for me and what helped kind of define me as a coach. And again, it's my journey, I suppose, my lessons. And I'm not asking anybody to agree with what I say. It's, like I said, it's just my story, and if there's anything I say that can help people, then that's really all I want. I suppose the 3 athletic highlights for me have been bringing David Hines to be a national champion, training down in Sydney and Wexford, a lot of grass sessions, not having access to, the facilities that we may have now. Running 10:49 was fantastic. And then, as kind of Heinze was transitioning out, Phil came into the group, and a lot of what I learned with David and a lot of the other athletes I coached, then I started utilizing with Phil. And then I obviously had David McDonald along the way there as well, who's ran a 10:52 as a school kid. And just then, I suppose, the journey, then some of the majors that myself and Phil have been to. I played Gaelic, I've coached Gaelic. I was lucky enough to be involved with Tipperary last year, which really forced kind of how do I go from having a 2-hour track session that, I now have 20-25 minutes once or twice a week to do speed work, which is like, it was just, it just messed with my mind at the start, but very quickly you figure out that you can do an awful lot in 20 minutes if you do it smart and clever, and microdose over time. So that was just nice to see that I could have some small impact in a different sport. And as a coach, it was good to be involved in a different sport. So my philosophy changed and grown with time. Failures that I would have perceived as failures, I don't like calling them failures because they're lessons, okay? So they're perceived failures, but to create change, right? If we don't change, then we're not learning. I was initially very risk adverse when I started coaching because of injuries that I had suffered, and it took me a long time. I would say it took me 10 years to get kind of over that, and learn how to push an athlete, which, in itself is not bad. I didn't want to injure anybody, but I suffered maybe from, the work rate aspect of not pushing athletes in a safe manner. I would have been very technical at the start. I suppose I would have chased speed and maybe not everything else that comes with it, like the energy system work and things like that. And don't get me wrong, like technical models, short to long approach, they all work. But I think in Ireland, with just the weather, with, there's so much more we can do where the weather isn't conducive to running fast. This is like short to long is brilliant if you live in America in a hot country, or if you're doing 3 or 4 big training camps a year. But ultimately, there's we keep short to long, but see, my approach is probably short to long, long to short, and meet somewhere in the middle. I was always fascinated by strength and conditioning, both as an athlete and as a coach, and I've upskilled where possible. I developed a better understanding of energy systems, and that doesn't stop. None of this stops. So, like, the core of my philosophy, I suppose, is to get the basics right, create a very happy environment for athletes to thrive in, create a tribe, and don't accept mediocrity of yourself or your athletes, and that's every day and everything. But let athletes dream as well. I think we were lucky to be part of a conference that Daniel Kilgannon set up, where Jack Borley gave us a talk over 2 days, and just a key thing, because I was kind of going through a similar thing myself at the time, where I was like, I was just thinking, like, if you don't have dreams, kids have dreams, like you gotta take those dreams and let them live them, and try and just give them the belief that they can reach those dreams. And he said something very similar. He quoted Walt Disney about, just having dreams, and if we have dreams, we don't have anything, but something along that line. So I think that's very important, that we foster that sort of an environment. But like, coaching is a privilege. Yeah, I know, like, we're all volunteers, okay? There's nobody gets paid to coach in Ireland like this, like what we do, but it is a privilege, because you're impacting people, and I think that's a very, very important thing. But we have to make sure that we impact them in a positive way. And what I've highlighted here in cap locks is be ready for the challenge. At any point in time, an athlete will cross your paths that you need to be one step ahead of. Like, everybody will have the athlete at some point in their career. I think it's very important to be ready for that day. And it's not that you have to go on this journey on your own. There's so many people that you can reach out to in time when you need to. But I think we should always be ready. And there's some unbelievably fantastic coaches around Ireland. You can only look at the talent that's out there from, every corner of the country. There's talent coming out, and that's testament to coaches being ready. Coaching is tough, but I think people don't rely enough on building networks and seeking out mentors. Like, not everybody has the answers, but there are a lot of people out there that want to help, and you need support along the journey, and embrace the journey. And a big thing for me was learning how to manage the swing between success and failure. It's the higher the high, the lower the low, and over time, I've just learned to manage to be kind of in the middle somehow. I know it's very hard to not get carried away, but I think with time you learn to kind of just treat the two of them somewhat similar. I'm not saying don't enjoy the success, because there will be bad days, but I just think, as volunteer coaches, when you get, dragged into this sport, I suppose, and the emotions that come with it, it can be such a roller coaster. And that's where kind of having your support crew come in handy. This is just about, just having dreams. Like the middle picture is Phil winning the national schools in 2013. And, a couple of years later, leading out a heat of a world indoor race, or coming second at a world indoor tour wearing her WIT singlet. And the journey in between was by no means linear. Like, it was not a straight line up. It was rocky, but we believed, we believed that we could do something, and there was always something in Phil. There was a drive. And she'd be the first to say, like, Phil didn't rock up with unbelievable top speed, or like, didn't win any major races as a kid, so there wasn't this unbelievable huge amount of fast twitch fiber. It was there, but there was also the will to want to improve, and like, you need that. You can't do this half. You can't be half in to get to this level. By all means, there's athletes need sport, and there's varying levels of commitment, and by no means am I saying I wouldn't coach an athlete who was just wanting to do it for the enjoyment. That's not what I'm saying. But if you get somebody and they tell you that they want to go to the top, then they got to want to go to the top. They got to meet you if you're going to meet them halfway. So this, like, we used to always say, like, I remember at the start, Phil be sitting on the couch watching majors, and I'd say someday you'll be off that couch and you'll be in those majors. And thankfully, we've had a very nice journey along the way. Big believer in building your own, and I don't even want to call it high performance. It's a misused word. Build your own environment, build your own coaching environment. And I suppose Phil moving to Waterford, I was always already a coach there. I was lucky to have an unbelievable relationship with WIT already, going back to when I was a student and an athlete. But some fantastic people within WIT and WIT Arena helped create this environment for Phil and myself, along with the support that already existed from Athletics Ireland. But albeit that being in Dublin, and we needed something local, obviously, traveling and things like that. So physios and sports science through Stephen Barrett, but sports psychology, the gym, the track was already there through the RSC. Again, another very supportive group of people along the journey, and just training groups, but like build your own tribe. We travel up and down throughout the winter, and we work with Jeremy's group in Dublin, and we share ideas. We foster just an environment that people want to thrive and learn in. And the center of this is the athlete and coach. We drive the bus, and to be in this circle, you have to be part of our team. And I'm very much, I won't say protective, but obviously, if we have our dreams, we don't want this to be derailed. And we would obviously work with people who want to work with us. So big believer in and this is, I suppose this is maybe, use the word I don't like using, high performance, but even at a club level, like you can build all these things, like have somebody that's a good physio that's connected to the club, and is there a senior athlete that can help mentor to some of the junior athletes? Is there a senior coach that can help mentor the junior coaches and things like that? And just start creating an environment that is conducive to success and takes away any kind of worries that an athlete might have. I don't have access to a physio, or I need this, and a lot of it is just basic. What did we do? I just started writing this. I went through Phil's progression, and I just totted up, I suppose, where Phil was 2013. Phil was came to me from a very, 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 very good coach in Bandon called Liz Coomey, who's having great success of recent with Shane Howard, and the name escapes me, but she's a very good 400, 200 girl coming up through the ranks as well. And Phil came very prepared and ready to train. And really all I did in 2014 was put a bit of a technical model on it. And bear in mind, the first 4 years from 2014 to 2017 was remote. Phil was in Cork, I was in Wexford, and we probably saw each other every 2 weeks at best. So it was difficult. It was difficult, but we did a lot of videos, calls and video analysis, and it wasn't by any means, ideal. And Phil came up to, Wexford or Waterford for spells and things like that. So like the 2014 to 2017, I think it's worth bearing in mind that this was remote coaching, and I'm not sure it's anything I'd ever do again, or Phil, but we got where we had to get eventually. But just looking at the last row, like the number, you can look at this two ways. You can say the percentage of improvement from 2014 to 13, and I picked her PBs because after 2018 we obviously had we had an injury in 2019, and 2020 was what it was. But if we look at the percentage improvement from 2013 to the national record, say, you can either say those numbers are very big or those numbers are very small. I don't know how to look at them, but to me, it's like they are small. Like it's inches. It's like that quote from Any Given Sunday, like life is a game of inches and athletics is a game of inches. And if we're not looking in many different areas for those tenths and hundredths, we're doing ourselves a disservice. And what I'm going to go into is maybe a little bit of how we found those inches, and in some cases we found meters. So let's go on from here. Okay, I could get stuck on this slide, so I'm going to try not to, right? There's a lot in it. This is just in red, I suppose, is keys to a key phrase that I want to cover for that year. And within the box is what happened in that year. But like 2013, Phil was with Bandon, she was with Liz Coomey, did a fantastic schools double that were national records at the time. But like any records, as Phil would always say herself, they're there to be broken, and they have been broken since. So Phil has been part of a raising the bar standard among Irish female sprinters, and it really is among Irish female sprinters that the bar has progressed the most, I would say, in this country. If you look at, the progression of, or the depth of sprinting at an international level is just phenomenal in with regards to who we have in Ireland at the moment, and hopefully it will keep rising. So Phil went to Euro Juniors. You say herself, she had no expectations. She came fourth. Maybe that was the best thing that could have happened, Phil, that she didn't win a medal, because maybe that would have, changed how she approached and maybe took a little bit of the drive, and she might have got comfortable. I have a medal now. I don't know, but I feel that it probably gave her the impetus to push on. So Phil came to me 2014, a college student in UCC. We did a lot of 60-meter work. There was stuff that Phil wasn't doing right out of the blocks, and I saw that as low-hanging fruit. And we quickly got some returns. So Phil went from a 7:45, I think, to 7:36, which was an under 23 record at the time. She dead heated with Amy Foster for the national senior title outdoor, and she went to Zurich and competed in the European outdoors, just missing out in the semi-final by one spot, ran 11:51. So to be so close to her PB, which was 11:49, to win nationals to 11:51 at her first majors, I think people really underestimate the difficulty of performing at PB levels at majors. Not everybody gets to do that. It's especially at the age, I think Phil was 18 at the time, was the youngest in probably a lot of the events, and that was just a fantastic experience for me as a coach and for her to be so young. But the season ended on a very good note. They broke the national 4x1 record there. Then Phil was doing nursing. I suppose 2015 lent itself to Phil having to do work on the wards. Training took a hit, and ultimately, fitness took a hit. Everything took a hit, and we quickly ended up in a situation where just the form of 2014 didn't kick into 2015. It didn't kick on. We still managed. We went, great experience. We went to Florida for 4 weeks as a precursor to Ireland. We're going to the World Relays, but we did an extra 2 weeks. We made a lot of good contacts. We raced in some fantastic races over there, and we managed to get a qualifying time for the under 23s, despite being, I think Phil got tonsillitis as well over there, so it couldn't have got much worse. But we scraped into another majors, which was important from an experience perspective, albeit wouldn't have gone in any way to plan. And as the season kind of wore on, things just got, progressively worse. And I'm trying to remember, was that the year? I think that may have been the year we were in Belgium with Marcus and Ger O'Donnell, and we just finished off the season with just a small little trip around Belgium, and if it wasn't this year, it was the year after. But anyway, it was a kind of a key turning point. And I just said to her, I could have picked the worst day. It was lashing rain, and I said, "Why don't you run a 400?" Now, I've just explained a bad season for an athlete who was predominantly a 100-meter runner, struggling for form, and I asked her to run a 400, and it really was because I just wanted to see. I always knew Phil had a nice, a nice bit of technique, and she was good at running relaxed. And I'd already started shifting my mind to like Phil needs to be obviously fitter because we saw what not being fit does to Phil. And obviously she was grown as a, as a young athlete, as a young female athlete. And you're 19, 20, and she 57 seconds, I think, something like that. Nothing crazy, but it was. I remember talking to Jared after and said, there's actually something there. The way she ran that 400, like I think there's something there. I don't care about the time, like, but it was just a very composed, relaxed run the whole way. Now she hated it, every inch of it. And out of that year, we decided. I said to her, look, at that point, I don't want you to be a 400 runner, but maybe you will be in time. But going into 2016, let's get fit, right? And let's get good at running 300s. Let's not look at anything else, but like, let's look at trying to improve your 300-meter time. And ultimately we had, we wintered well, didn't make an individual major, but Phil ran in Amsterdam on the 4x1 and the 4x4. Again, got to experience another major and ticked the box along the way. That was, I suppose, a kind of a key moment in like what not being fit did to Phil. It wasn't that like, we didn't want to be fit. It was just nursing, and just that year we just didn't lend itself, and got a very bad case of tonsillitis, which kicked her back as well. And but that was key to us to turn the corner. 2017 things started getting tough. Then Phil's 3 years in college, he's on her own. So we decided, we had a chat where it was like, look, you're too talented. We can see that there's something there. You're too talented to let it go to waste, but at the same time, I know, I wasn't directing Phil in any way to what her career choice should be. But Phil being Phil, wanting to give it a shot, we figured out a plan whereby she could finish up 3 years in nursing and then transfer into a HDIP in UCC, and ultimately then into a master's in Waterford. So we'd already started developing a 2 or 3 year plan. So we consolidated what we had. We started dipping our toes in a little bit more in fours. We found out very quickly that Phil had a pretty decent indoor 400 in her, and just, off the back of just trying to be a better 300-meter runner and getting a little bit fitter, ran a 53 outdoor in Belgium, I think, as well. And ultimately, went and ran European indoors over 60 and 400, which is a very rare occurrence. But funny enough, you'll see it a lot more in female athletes that have that range. And then Phil went to the World University Games in Taipei and came 7th in the final. But we knew we still weren't there. Like, nursing was still holding her back, and remote coaching was definitely, not helping. So 2018, Phil made the big call, big move, did her HDIP 2017, moved to WAT, and straight away into a training group. And straight away, I had eyes on Phil every day, every training session. We were able to implement it. And I always said that to her. I said, if you ever do move, or if you ever do decide to do this right and you move up, you will get better. I had that belief in myself, and I think you do have to believe in and back yourself sometimes. And the transformation was it. I remember sending pictures of stopwatch times in December to Jeremy, going like, I'm not sure if this is right, but she's repping low 23s here, like repping for 200s, and like, but then the next week something else had happened, and the week after then, so the stopwatch wasn't lying. The stopwatch was telling us what was coming, and ultimately what it was a 52.08 in Vienna, which was a world lead. And from a 53, 54 seconds. So like, and I just go back and even look at what I said about the end of 2015, 57-second 400, not fit, to 2018, running 52.08 and coming 11th in the world indoors. And this is where believing and dreaming is so important, because that is an unbelievable turnaround. That even to have the mental resilience to go, like to go on, to keep going, to believe in yourself. And ultimately, that was a sign of things to come that year with the national records over the 1 and 2. But that was just a phenomenal year. And I suppose we were blessed that year. It was something that I'll never forget, and Phil won't either, because I suppose dipping into 2019, we had to go back and dig out a bit of resilience again. We went to Euro indoors. You know, there's a lot of talk about medals and all of this stuff. And, you know, yeah, we were experienced enough to not to kind of supposed to get caught up in that. But we did get caught up in a basic thing of you know, tactics in the heat and big cues and small cues. And, you know, I think Jeremy was sitting beside me. And I think if we were to go and do it all again, we'd be, you know, we wouldn't try to be as, you know, I think Phil's speed sometimes gets her in trouble as well, because I think she's in that heat. She remembered looking at the clock going, I'm after going way too quick here. And indoor 400, even you make one move, you have to kind of go with it. So I think we suffered a little bit from trying too hard in that heat. But again, like you look at what happened in the semi-final, I didn't see it, like bad lane. Ultimately, you get a bad lane if you got pipped on the line in the heat. You got third, got in a small queue, you got a lane 1 or 2. And you're chasing, but put herself in an unbelievable position to fight for second, got clipped and still came third in the semi. Yeah, so look, that was a great year. 2019, that was the indoor season. Everything looked fantastic. We opened up with a 23:04 in Athlone. Remember, it was 9 degrees. She ran the 100 in her leggings, ran 11:5. And I thought, here we go. We got offers for Diamond Leagues, 3 Diamond Leagues lined up. We didn't have to go look for it, and then we were in Malta, and she literally just finished the best session of her life and tripped on a 2-inch step and broke her 5th met. So that, and I'll go further into what we did through that as well, but that was a huge setback mentally, and you know, for both of us. But we went to work and we worked very hard, and we ultimately came back, and Phil came 6th in World University Games, and I think she ran 23:4 3 times, 12 weeks after breaking her foot. And won nationals in 23:3, and ultimately Doha being a very late World Championships again. You know, with Phil, fitness is key, and we just ran out. We ran out of runway. We threw a lot at the World University Games and mid-season. But again, we went to World Championships. Like, my God, like I would have given I would have given anything to bring an athlete to World Championships. So like, you know, we got to look at the positives as well. And 2020, I think everybody has a story about 2020. Yeah, like again, the bounce back from, I suppose, the disappointment of Doha, and I don't even call it disappointment, it just was what it was at the moment in time. Like, it had been an unbelievable season. Probably I would look at 2019 and the resilience and the bounce back ability that Phil showed as being nearly better than 2018 and records and all that. Like, it just shows true character. But 2020 again, national record indoor, things look absolutely brilliant. And then obviously we all know what happened then. So yeah, look, you can see there's a lot has happened in this Phil's career since 2013, and a lot has happened for an athlete, but also with me as a coach. And I felt that it was time to maybe chill out a little bit. Phil couldn't qualify anymore for the Olympics; nothing counted. So we trained. Phil moved in because she needs to train. Obviously, athletes you can't just stop for 6 months and hope to come back in September. So we just took the heat out a little bit. We stopped doing maybe some of the hard stuff. And when, you know, nationals came on the scene, we had 10 weeks, I suppose, to get into some sort of shape for nationals, and we knew that we were in, you know, good enough shape that Phil could run well. And thankfully she did the double in 2 fantastically tightly run races. But again, that's just a high level of the journey, and you can see by no means was it an easy path. So key cornerstones to my program. So at the bottom, the big rocks, yeah. And you know, specifically maybe for females, I think these are key. Just being fit and being strong, fit and strong. Out of those 2 things, if you explore those, speed will come out. I think in the middle, you have to be, mindfulness is key. You have to create a happy environment. And you have to create a group. You have to create your own tribe. Drive is key. You need lots of drive. But talent, I think you can be, you know, you can have everybody has a talent, like, but I think you can build on talent. I think talent can be explored. You know, ultimately the genes we're born with are the genes that we get stuck with, right? And we can all blame our parents for that, but there's something in everybody that can be improved. And that for me is key. But this is like, to me, even though I would be speed, I'm a sprints coach, so speed is obviously important, but it's speed to me comes out of a lot of the basics. And for me, speed is about, you know, keeping on top of technical models, working your acceleration drills, but not overly focusing on it either. Just an insight to two weeks in 2018 leading to the 2 national records, and it's not the national records that I want to point out here. Phil got to a place that she couldn't have done to 14, 16, 15, 16, where she was good trainer. She trained very hard, but couldn't do the volume. That's not even volume. I don't want to make it sound like, and it by no means is the program is hard but smart, or smart but hard. She couldn't rep. She didn't have that rep ability. She couldn't do, key speed endurance sessions. But in 2018, because we had slow burned it and got better at some stuff along the way, and ultimately kept working the basic pillars, we got to a point in where like Phil could bang out any session, and getting to that fitness level of repability brings with it a lot of pluses. But one of them is, and I don't know how she does it. She did it, but she did. So on the Wednesday, we went to the graded meet in Dublin. We weren't really meant to run the 100. It was more about the 400 as a blowout before Geneva, which was something that, again, you learn along the way. And this is something that I stole off Jeremy Lyons, who was coaching Craig Lynch at the time. And he did a blowout run with him on a Wednesday before a big meet in Geneva. And it worked for him. He ran a stinking 48, I think, in Irishtown, and ran a PB in Geneva. So we copied that with Phil, but we ran 100 as a warm-up, and she was in fantastic shape at the time. She'd ran an 11:16 windy time in Waterford. She'd ran, she was getting under the Irish record, which was 11:40 at the time. Consistently, maybe, albeit wind assisted, nothing was really falling right weather-wise. This is Ireland, but I always have one eye on the weather, and I was like, my God, it's sunny and it's a tailwind. And thankfully it was, it worked. It was 11:28. It was 2.0 on the wind gauge, which is, you don't get that too often. And she ran a PB about 45 minutes after that, over an outdoor PB, 52.6. And then we got on a flight, went to Geneva, and she ran a 52.19 PB. And that's the picture on the right. And then 2.5 hours later, ran a 200 PB. And the mind boggles even looking back at that. That's just, maybe those 4 days will never be repeated again in Irish sprinting, but that range is just phenomenal, and it's just testament to her as an athlete. Then it lent itself to what another thing that was coming in a couple of weeks, where she backed up her 100 with an 11:30 in the Cork City Sports, and then she ran a 22.99 for the national record on the Saturday. A couple of days later, ran 52.8 at the Morton Games, and then got a late call up to the Diamond League, and was a bit fried at the time. And 11:54 is still a phenomenal time, but you can see that there was just a bit of fatigue in the legs at the time, and also ran a 4x1. So getting to that place in training where you can be a consistent trainer, where you slowly over time build up the ability to do a clever amount of reps, and there's guidelines to all of this as well. Like, this is nothing, but it's something that we hadn't cracked, and we had to work at it over a couple of years. And this is just I just took a snapshot out of my rough program back in the day. So this would be the 4-week lead up, I suppose, to Phil's 100-meter record. And I suppose because we train, we train for fours, not because we want to run fours. Like, it's nearly a byproduct of the way we train. Phil just happens to be a very fast sprinter that can run a good 4. But we find that the training for 4s with Phil lends itself to just that it just gives her a better speed endurance capability, and keeps her fitter. But a lot of speed comes out of the work. So you can see, look really quickly, Tuesdays is always a speed day. Thursdays is like a speed endurance day, and Sunday is more of a special endurance day. So you can see Phil was doing 5.4, 3.2.1 with a 300 at the end session that we robbed from James Hillier. That worked well, and we progressed that over the weeks, and ultimately, 7 days before Phil broke the Irish 100-meter record, she did 5.4, 3.2.14. I'm not saying I would have always. I didn't put that in there with the view that Phil was going to go up and break the 100-meter record on a Wednesday. Running the 100 was a sort of a last-minute thing, but you can see, when you get to a point where an athlete is fit and they can do these sessions, and it's how we got there is the key, right? You can't just throw somebody into this, and because this works for Phil, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for somebody else. Okay, you have to coach what's in front of you, but you can take a subset of this. You can cut these sessions in half. But you can see Tuesday is always speed, and we do blocks on Thursday. Like there's a technical element to every session over the week and the months. Sorry, let's get these moving on. Again, this is just a 4-week lead into the Cork City Sports, the 11:13 to 22:99. Again, the volume has come back. I've taken out the 5-4-3-2-1. The special endurance has gone more into split runs. It's more quality. The focus is still ultimately, the 200 at Cork, and ultimately we went to Berlin for a 1 and 2. But we had a good mountain to come down off. So we had a lot to taper off, and I think that's key. The more that you can bleed in, to a program, the more that you can take out, the more that you can get a bounce. Again, this is just an overall plan. You have to, like I said, if you want to get somewhere, you got to have a plan. You got to figure it out. You got to put in your competitions, the phases, the 4-week blocks, just at a high level. Okay, it doesn't need to be overly fancy, but like I said, this is just a sample week. Monday is just a circuit or yoga or gym. Sorry, not gym, just a circuit. Tuesday we do speed work with lower body focus in the gym. Wednesday we do upper body to rest the legs, but we do some bike work, which I'll get into later. Thursday is speed endurance, middle speed endurance, so kind of that 120 to 300 type range. Friday we do, it's called total body, really. It's like just deadlifts and is the key exercise. And again, we do another bike session. Saturday is fully rest, and then Sunday is that little bit of a slower, more volume type day. And just some numbers there for Phil. It actually has got unbelievably strong over the years, but again, it has been progressive. So within a block, so I operate mostly on a 4-week block. It's like 3 up and 1 down, but the 1 down is really, the down part is I give a whole weekend off. Like the Tuesday and Thursday sessions would still have quality, albeit probably with more recovery. Closer to a race, then it morphs into a 2+1 model, so 2 weeks of training, I suppose, and then 1 down. And I try to shift the emphasis every week. So in a 4-week block, the first week could be all about Tuesday. But that doesn't mean Thursday and Sunday don't get a focus, but it could be just that's the day that they get the most recovery with speed, or that's the day that we really focus on speed work. That's not to say the next Tuesday when it's a speed endurance focus, the Thursday session gets a little bit more focus. Doesn't mean that we stop focusing on Tuesday. It's just I just tinker with the volume and the intensity and the recovery times, and it just lets the different batteries that are in our body, like our nervous system and our energy systems, to keep recharging. Now, if you looked at it, you might think like, well, geez, all those weeks look the same. But I think, look, the devil's in the detail. And then strength endurance, I suppose the Sunday probably becomes the focus then. And then week 4 is probably just more of a quality week. I don't really do a whole lot of testing. I use sessions as like I'd have certain sessions as testing. Like, can you do 3 by 2 by 120 off 6 and 12 minutes at a certain time without dropping off too much, things like that. Like, so that's kind of where I go with testing. Many ways to roam. A lot of the periodization models we see are based on, I suppose, in the world of track and field, right? So science will tell us that these are periodized models. The track and field world will say, well, this is what Michael Johnson did with Clyde Hart. But I think it's too easy to look at a program and go, like, I'm going to try that, but without looking, well, what was that athlete like? Like Michael Johnson was just blessed with speed, so he could do more volume. Because the speed was always going to be there. So we have to be careful about what becomes like popular and what becomes current, and figure out our own model. And I would have played with all of these over the years, and like I landed somewhere in this. It's not mine. It is a model out there. You sort of do both short to long, and you meet in the middle. Ends to middle is another way of calling it. Okay, so you're sort of hitting everything at the same time, but like with different focus throughout the year. This is just, again, James Healy was over one weekend. He presented, and he has this plan for every, under red there, I think it's like aerobic, and then he has lactic capacity and speed endurance. So he has a roadmap throughout like a whole year of the sessions that he wants to do. Now, he doesn't pick all of them, but like there is a natural progression to the distance, the time. And I think this is a really good exercise for coaches to do, to just not only plan out the year, but if Tuesday is a speed day, well, if I start off with, I'm short recoveries, and we're going to keep it, short acceleration zone and not look for full speed. But how do I get from that then to like 2 weeks before indoors or outdoors or whatever it is. So just a checklist. Key areas to explore and develop for me. Just get fit, right? Look at ways of getting fit where it's not running based, okay? Because the last thing we want to do with somebody that's already running 3 days a week is to try and get them to do tempo or, you know, God forbid, a 5K or something like that. Like there's so many off-feet ways of getting fit, like the watt bike, like rowing, like ski ergs, like, you know, circuits, and, you know, but definitely, if, you know, the basis of all sport is fitness, we should be fit. Get strong in a safe way. Don't, you know, keep it simple. Find a strength and conditioning coach if you are not comfortable, but upskill yourself at the same time. Get good at just the basic lifts. Don't worry about Olympic lifting. It can be quite technical. If you can do it and you want to learn it, by all means, but just getting strong, that you're prehabbing your body, but you're also building strength, will ultimately transfer to the track without going down too far of a rabbit hole on the whole strength. I suppose, like, there is a point when strength is, you're strong enough. Like I said, get good at repping, get you know, put in years to get good at certain sessions, but have target times that vary based on volume, intensity, time of the year. Don't be afraid to go over distance, you know, like Phil would do 600s and 500s, but it taught her how to relax. It taught her a different rhythm. It taught her to stay calm in you know, time of need at the end of races. Although it mightn't look it sometimes, but it over distance builds a good mental engine as well. Like, you know what I mean? If you can get an athlete to get good at, you know, something that out of the comfort zone, and that could be a 250, it could be a 150 for some people, but if you get them good at doing like 3 150s off a short recovery, and then, you know, they suddenly just go like, well, if I can do 150, then a 60-meter indoor is going to be very easy. So don't neglect the mental aspect of it. Never stop working technical without hammering an athlete. You can do it like wickets. You don't have to coach. Wickets will coach the athlete. If you do wickets repetitively over time, they just teach a very, very good model. And I really, really like them. When it gets to blocks, you have to do a little bit of work, but again, there's a lot of, you know, a lot of books out there, and there's a lot of stuff on the internet with regards to how you set yourself up and certain angles. And once you know what you're looking for, then I think blocks get easier to coach. Skipping, we got to go back to the basics. We got to get kids with skipping ropes, and we got to do low level plyometrics, and, you know, not have one big plyometric session, I think, is dangerous, but just disperse it within warm-ups and things like that. Keep sessions fresh, mix the focus. Measure jumps, and I not like, you can get, like, there's some jump apps, there's jump mats, but learn about counter movement jumps and learn what a reactive strength index is, I think, is key. But basically, these are just good to track over time, more so for I suppose junior to senior developing athletes, to give you a lot of data about readiness and, you know, season upon season. But again, even measuring a standing long jump, things like that. Measuring standing long jumps and how far you can throw a 5 kg med ball, or something that, you know, you can make fun and games as well. And keep racing for races. Don't become a racer in training, just become an excellent trainer. And again, I haven't mentioned speed, right? Speed is there, but a lot of speed will come out if you can tick a lot of these low hanging fruit boxes. Yeah. I'm conscious of time now. Liliane, you interject here now if I'm going off.
No, you're perfect. Work
All
away.
right. Again, just on jumps, right? So this is something I started doing very early. I bought a chrono jump mat. I think you can get one for €50 now. It wasn't that when I bought it, but there's lots of apps out there as well, right? And jumps, for like, when I get into technical, jumps will tell you an awful lot about an athlete's strength and their power. Okay, and you can see that over time, Phil's graph has gone up. Her counter movement jump basically would tell us how powerful or how strong Phil is, right? And then something that Phil is, I suppose, like, some athletes are inherently reactive. They're bouncy. They're like, you know, you drop a golf ball, bounce straight back up. Phil would, you know, she'd admit herself, that's not her. She's more of a strength-based athlete, okay? But RSI is something that we can train to get better at. And basically, it's just how, you know, you step off a box, how long you hold the ground, how high you jump. It's a simple formula. But look, an important point of what I want to show here is that when Phil broke her foot, it had a big impact on her reactive strength, and you can see how it took a little bit of a nosedive. So it shows what injuries can do, and what then you need to focus on when you go back. Okay, so it's there's so many things that you have to focus on post injury, but a lot of it is just slowly get the reactivity back. For sprinters, reactivity is key. and just learn, just read about this, and then simplify it. Again, like I said, stand-alone jumps just as good. Just a little bit on the energy demands of sprinting, okay? And look, I'm not a sports scientist, but I've studied, and I've studied a lot of really good minds, and none more so than Stephen Barrett. But like, it's common knowledge, right? You get a free speed for about 5-6 seconds, okay? After that, then you're into holding form, but you're into energy system where your body just starts putting out waste product that's also can be used as a fuel source, but it's that dreaded, a little bit of burn, a little bit of acid in the legs. But I think we underestimate the impact that it even over the course of 100 meters, and especially with females, just because of just perceived strength not imbalances, but like, you know what I mean, compared to our male athletes. But they are a little bit, they hit that little bit earlier in the race, the need for speed endurance qualities, and it I don't think we look at that enough, and we're lucky to have studied Phil and other athletes, but like we've tested, say, the amount of lactate that Phil will produce across a range of sessions, pure speed, and it's speed endurance and the strength endurance, and we have a profile of what happens within Phil's body when she's sprinting, and very, very soon we found that very even over like an 80-meter sprint, a lot of lactate produced. And if you're not fit and you don't have the ability to get rid of that lactate, because ultimately it's a fuel source, but when we're sprinting, it's hard to ultimately shuttle it as quick as we'd like, and no matter what we do, we're going to end up slightly flooded. But the better that we can get at buffering lactate and its waste products, the better that you'll hang on. And it's not speed endurance, it's speed maintenance, I suppose, is probably the key. And I have a video here that's probably a good example of what I'm talking about. So this is the meet that I put on every year called Tonaguia, wind assisted sprints meet, conducive to fast times. But this was 2018, and this was Phil's opener over 100, and it was her second race on the day, and this is an 11:16 wind assisted time. I think it was 3.0, but this is the fastest time that's ever been ran by an Irish woman, regardless of her national record. 11:16 wind assisted or not is the fastest time ever ran, and I'm just going to roll it here. I suppose what I want this video to help me explain is, it's not that Phil wasn't getting faster through that race, and I know a lot of people know this already, but what that shows is she just decelerated the best, and this was off the back of 3 or 4 years building to being a very good trainer, to getting better speed endurance, to dabbling in fours, even though you don't need to do that. But it was just a culmination of, like, Phil was fit, she was strong, she was training very well, and when you do that, a lot of things are possible. So decelerating, and you saw it again, I suppose, at national championships, where Phil, as by your own admission, not in her best shape, but we decided to not be in the best shape, I suppose, to take that mental break as well. But we knew that we had speed endurance. We knew that we had trained hard enough, and she can always go back and dip into her buckets of reserve. And we knew that she may be in trouble halfway through the race. We knew she'd be in trouble maybe 60 or 70, but we knew the last 30 was where Phil decelerates the least. And if you're going into a race and you can't say to your athlete, trust your speed endurance, trust your back end of the race. It's not that I don't trust your start, but some people are brilliant starters. You have to have a couple of different weapons. You have to have different game plans, and you have to have plan Bs and Cs. And if you can't say to your athlete, like, trust your back end, then you need to go back and look at what you're doing. I truly believe in that, because you're doing the athlete a disservice. Again, WATTBIKE is something that we stumbled upon. I was looking when Phil moved to Waterford. I wanted Phil to get fitter than what she was, but I didn't want to run tempo, because it's very hard to measure what you're actually doing. And we had sort of drifted into, I'd seen Tony Minicello did a lot of WATTBIKE work with his athletes, and again, I reached out, very open dialogue. He did a lot of Jessica's 800 meter work on the WATTBIKE because of injuries, And his way of looking at the watt bike was, if you want to replicate a track session, double the time you were going to spend running and half the time for recovery. I wanted the watt bike because it gives data on what you're putting out and you can track heart rate, things like that. I wanted to replicate tempo running. I want to see what was Phil's heart rate doing. And I remember the first time we did it, I was looking at heart rate going, wow, this is your heart rate is just, it's going up and it's not coming down. And that coincided with meeting Stephen Barrett, who was a lecturer in WAT at the time, and he helped us explore the world of just measuring what was happening. We knew looking at her heart rate that Phil was probably flooding her body with lactic, and not getting rid of it. And sure enough, when we tested, Phil was, and the session was just 30 seconds on, 60 seconds easy, not a full out sprinting, but at a certain watts where it was, it was a 6 out of 10 perceived effort. But what was happening was we were seeing Phil was producing on the bike what she would have to do an unbelievably nasty session on the track, but the perceived effort on the bike was nowhere near that. Like, yeah, sweating and maybe a little bit out of breath, but it was the equivalent of doing like a 350 meter time trial or 3x300 off 8 minutes, like something really septic like. So we knew then straight away we could do something that not only improve Phil's fitness because we can measure her heart rate, but something that would also help, buffer lactate or help her, get rid of it better or be more economical. And over time, that's what happened. Like, we have the data, we saw what was happening, and then that ultimately transferred to the track. And because like sprinters would produce a ton of lactate, and that's what you want. You fast twitch muscles, you want them, churning out, lactate. That's brilliant. Whereas if you go to the endurance side of the house, they want to just be tipping away, use your oxygen, get rid of lactate. Brilliant. So it's not a bad thing. Producing lactate is a bad thing. What is a bad thing is if you can't handle it, if you can't get rid of it. So definitely the bike, the watt bike was a big moment for us, and something that is still a cornerstone of our program. So this, just to talk a little bit on, I suppose, injury and what happens when injuries strike. And this will happen, please God it doesn't, but ultimately at some point we're all going to face, and as coaches we'll face it more because we're going to be working with a lot of athletes over a longer period of time. But this was obviously, Phil was in the shape of her life. We were in Malta, broken foot. What happens? So made a phone call, Emma Gallivan. We got straight away into a hospital in Malta, confirmed a fracture. We're able to send back photographs straight away to Emma, and within an hour, surgeon had seen them, just in passing, kind of, and said, look, it looks to be in a good area where you don't need pins because that's a notoriously poor blood flow area. But until we got back, we didn't know. So in a boot, crutches, you're obviously dealing with a lot of mental anguish because you had 3 diamond leagues. You 2304 was your opener. Sky was the limit. But day 2 in Malta, we went back to work. We adapted. We went to the gym. We hammered anything that we could because ultimately we knew we could. Because Phil couldn't run. So we made up a lot of mad stuff. Yeah. It's a good video of Phil boxing me as well. Not box, like with boxing gloves, not real boxing, even though she probably wanted it at some point throughout that 12 weeks. But so we got back to Ireland. Week 2, we got out of the boot. This was April 30th, I think, probably 12 days post break. We kept cross training. We were swimming. We were training twice a week. And we were really just trying to keep her strength up, and her those 2 cornerstones I mentioned. By keeping her strength and her fitness up, we knew we had a fighting chance. Medically, we were told small chance that you would make it back for World University, which was, we wanted to win that. We were in shape to win it. Now we just wanted to be there. But we worked with some fantastic physios, like Phil's physio in Waterford, Conor McCarthy, Paul Galler in the Institute. We were in the Alter G. We were looking at Phil's gait, and just through, I suppose, a progressive program. But it was we were pushing as well. Like, we were pushing the fitness, and eventually we got to kind of week 6 and we were back doing drills. Week 7 we were doing strides. Week 8 we were running. But we weren't running well. Like, even in 8 weeks, the loss in technical form, and it just really made me realize how much technical running we underappreciate what we do. Like wickets, if in there twice a week. Like, we forget how important they are. So we had to work. We had 4 weeks from that point to get back running well, to go to a World University Games, and somehow she did it. I would hold that 6th place as probably the best thing that she's done as an athlete. And she ran 23.4 3 times in 2 days. Like, again, which shows by keeping Phil strong and keeping Phil fit. Not only did she go and run 23.4, but she went and ran it 3 times in 2 days, which shows that she had no drop off in strength endurance or no drop off in speed endurance capabilities. And to me, that's huge. Phil is not unique, folks, by the way. Like, you don't look at this and go like, oh, that, there's the elements of this will work for any athlete. And it's just finding out what works really is key. So what do we take away from that? Phil's drive, her determination, her bounce back ability, her will to succeed, my will to keep driving on. I suppose that just kept us going. And that's where I needed the likes of Jeremy around. You need people to talk to. You need your medical staff. You need your support team, and you can't do this in a silo. And we figured out that, cross training does help. We found out an awful lot about new things like blood flow restriction and things like that I won't get into now. But again, we noticed as well that the jumps took a hit, and even the fact that we didn't get a clean run at 2020, I would say we still haven't got Phil's reactivity back to where we want. So it just shows how quickly you lose something that you have to work so hard to get it back. But through all of this, obviously it's not the way we want to go at things, but you build character and you become resilient. And I would definitely say that, having experienced this, Phil was able to handle what happened this year with the cancellation of the Olympics, with me telling her we had to calm down on training and maybe take a break from the intensity. And at the start I might have been more about, right, let's, when you don't know the unknown, you're right, let's work on this or let's work on that. And as time went on and things were getting cancelled, I was like, no, do you know what, let's chill out here. And I think her maturity, I suppose, and her resilience allowed her to do that, allowed her to take a foot off the gas and be comfortable doing that. I don't think Phil, if Phil had medalled in the World University Games and had that clean run, that maybe she mightn't have been prepared to look at things with a different perspective. So she was able to bounce back and, and get herself into shape for nationals as well. But again, it's, this is what we want to see in athletes. This steely determination. Anybody can have that and anybody can develop it. And again, what did we do, right? Okay, so what do you do in a pandemic? You just got to keep training, okay? And again, we got to look at this because, we don't know what the future holds, right? Hopefully it's not what I truly hope that we don't go back to what we faced in, and I don't think we will. But, we can adapt. Yeah, we can find hills, we can find grass, we can do all that. And that's what we did. You just adapt. And as coaches, in this Venn diagram, there's stuff in the middle that should never go away regardless, okay? Maybe the worst thing that we face is where are we training today. And through lockdown, as you can see, Phil trained in my wife's Montessori school, which was converted to a gym. So you got to find a way. Big believer in role models, especially females having female role models. I'm not saying that's the way it should be. I'm just saying from looking at how Phil is around other high performing, it's not even high performing females, but like-minded girls that have the same sort of drive. And we were lucky to have Alison Miller train with us from time to time over the years. I ran with Alison when we were in college together before Alison became, I suppose, as prolific as she did in her rugby playing days. And just the energy when Alison was in the room anyway, but just that she'd been through her own struggles, her own journey. She's had her dark days, she's had her brilliant days. But Phil just thrived being around Alison, and they worked very well together, and she brought a lot of good messages to Phil that Phil kept with her. And unfortunately Alison had a very, very tragic leg break that really should have ended her career. But and I'm not saying anything to do with me, but I just remember texting one day and saying, look, when you're ready, we can get you, we can help you get you back if you want. And she did. She wanted it, and she came down, and we put that little, she's metal bar in her leg. We got her running in a way that she didn't look like she had a metal bar in her leg. Obviously in conjunction with her own physios and there are a few. But she then thrived, and I suppose in that environment, being around Phil, and they both helped each other through those tough times. And they're just, if you could bottle the two of them up and send them around the country, they would inspire a nation. They really are unbelievable together. And Ali's a fantastic ambassador for sport and for females. And you know, some of the key things is you know, Alison would say, like, you train for that day. You train for the day where it doesn't go right. That you have some tragedy like this, and you know, you just gotta get ready for it, for those days as well. Even though as much as you don't want them, but resilience is key, folks. And that's me. I felt like a waffle there, but anyway.
No, thank you, Shane. Thankfully, we didn't lose anyone anyway. So obviously, it looks like it's getting dark in a few people's houses. So I hope that you are still alert and ready to ask a few questions. And guys, at the moment you're muted, but what I will do is, like, if anybody has any questions, there is a reaction section there at the bottom of your phone or your screen, and if you just click the thumbs up, we'll be able to tune in and be able to get you to ask your questions. I suppose I have a few questions myself, and we're lucky we have Phil here as well. So if anyone has questions that they want to direct towards Phil or Shane, that would be great. I suppose, Shane, from just like a selfish point of view, with my women in sport hat on, you have dealt with both females and males throughout the years and got some fantastic results with both. Has your approach to training differed much from, say, like you said, you had a fantastic athlete, Mc Hines, who's obviously tough as nails.
Mick Hines, Mick. David Hines.
David Hines, sorry.
I can see Mick Hines there laughing into his teeth.
He's the wrong flag up, but sure, look, we won't annoy him about it. But with David Hines, sorry, should I say, and Phil, obviously both are very strong athletes, but like dealing with girls and dealing with women, we will admit we are a funny bunch to deal with at times, and that, look, whoever knows how to figure us out all together will be a millionaire. But has your approach to training Phil and some of the other women in your squad differed much to training boys?
I would say I think everybody's different. I think there's probably three buckets maybe athletes fall into, you know, that you can probably pick and choose maybe certain avenues to go down with them. I think a lot of the fundamentals will stay the same regardless. Like with Hines, anybody know him, like he couldn't do, he did no sport up to say 18 and nothing. So he had just this complete lack of aerobic fitness that he just would never get. I could never get him there, plus he just wouldn't do it. But he got very, very strong, but he lacked that fitness. And I suppose I would have taken elements of his program into Phil's program, and then developed, I suppose, my philosophy with her a little bit differently. So no, I definitely say, you know, not trying to be controversial, but like I find, you know, with Phil and say the other girls, they're, I don't know, to exclude a whole half of the house here, like, but they're probably more honest trainers, if that's the way to put it. Like, they probably will work, and that in itself lends itself to being a little bit dangerous. They will train harder, I think, when they do turn up, they will fully commit, and you kind of have to manage that a little bit more. I think fellas are just that little bit more, just that little bit harder to get them to go over the over that end line, you know. But bar that, no, I think the fundamentals stay the same. I think it's important for girls to have other girls in the group. I think you need that little bit of a peer group, that little bit of a support network. And just, yeah, it's just like, it's grand having lads there and having the crack. But, you know, there's days where, you know, it's just nice to have your own little inner tribe, I suppose.
100%. And Phil, if I could annoy you to get involved here, I'm going to unmute you. There we are. Now we have to let you out. This is your stage. Let fly if you want, Phil. Now he said enough, so it's about your time. You said you're now.
She's gonna fleece me here now and say everything I said is lies.
No, like, it's unbelievable presentation and just an insight into like what Shane has created, and like it's just a tiny insight into the whole, like, from the struggles to like the great days, and everyone doesn't see everything that goes on behind. Like, everyone just sees the results, but what goes into the results, be it good or bad, and things like that. But No, and like it's a credit to Shane with the group that he's created as well, like within Waterford, to get the most out of all of us and across different sports that he's working with. So it's absolutely super. But so many people can take so much from it, and as Shane was saying, like I'm not unique to this. Like I trained hard and train hard, and work their weaknesses. Like there's others in that are like so strong in areas that I'm so weak in, and everyone pushes each other on, and we have that bit of competitiveness and stuff like that. So like it's not as if I'm like really good in every single area. Like there are so many areas disaster in, but and even like say for younger athletes and stuff like that, like again so many people are focused on the winning and think it's like everything, you have to be a great junior to be a great senior. Like that's not the case. And like fifth year was the first year I went to All Ireland schools and things like that, and 2013 when I was in sixth year, that was the first time I made an international. But like you just have to like stick with it, and like I was told at the time maybe it's not the sport for me and try something different, but I stuck with it. And Joan was 2 years older than me and I was following her. But like if you enjoy it, keep enjoying it and explore the different events as well, because like I'm still exploring it, and I think it's good to change the focus as well. Sometimes like when we have the 100, the 200 and the 400, like there's times where I'm like, right, I need to step away from the 100 for a week, 2 weeks or whatever, and just switch it up, just because like it doesn't become like, not boring, but as in like it doesn't become the same thing and like frustrating if not going well, you know.
And Phil, a question I have for you, and like especially if there's some coaches here, and we've probably all wondered it at different stages of our careers of developing as coaches, but a lot of athletes or coaches look for the secret, the magic secret. They crack the drill, and all of a sudden that's the best thing, and they're going to go all the way. You have obviously transitioned lovely and progressively over the years from going from a good like youth to a good senior, or fantastic senior, should I say. You spoke about you have weaknesses and you have strengths as well. Is there a particular aspect that you've really embraced and you feel it's contributed to your success, or would it be hard to hit like, you know, just one thing?
I definitely think for me it was the longer stuff and like more the fitness type stuff. And I even look at the other lads that are training with me and say like they might be focused on 200s and say I'm focused on 200s for that particular year, but I have to train differently to them to a certain extent, and like what works for them doesn't work for me and vice versa. And like I can take a lot of volume whereas they may necessarily can. So like I think it's about figuring out what works for you individually, and Shane has done that along the way. And like we've seen that all the short stuff isn't what I need. I do need the longer stuff, and you saw on the program earlier, like before Geneva, running a 100, like we had 500, 400, 300, 200, 100 and a 400 like a week beforehand, like whereas people wouldn't like remotely think of doing something like that. But even right up to the days, we always have like high volume. That's what I respond to, but someone might be totally different. But you just have to figure out that along the way. And like I know for me strength is a massive thing, and if I drop off in that, then the speed is down. And I'm like working with Shane throughout the years, like I'm very clued into my training, and maybe like too much so at times, like because I can't be like fooled, or like like if it's not going well, I know it's not going well. And say when Shane was talking about the jumps, like I know what good jumps are for me, and if they're not good, I know things are down. And some like I can like sometimes I see why they're down, but other times I'm like just looking at the jump, and that's where Shane is in then to say, well, why things aren't going well and why things aren't aligning. But yeah, for everyone, it's about exploring what works for you individually. And I can just see within my own group how everyone is so different and what works for each individual. So like everyone in their own space is going to be the exact same.
And Phil, kind of you've talked about like personal, I suppose, accountability, like enjoyment and individuality. There's going to be coaches here and they're going to say, I spent my Friday night listening to Shane McCormack and Phil Healy, and they want to come back with a piece of maybe wisdom or advice for their athletes that hopefully they might get to see over the weekend or over the next coming weeks. Would you have any like advice that you'd offer them? Because obviously we know things are tough enough as it is, but for like that 13 to 18 year age group, it's very difficult at the moment. With kind of lack of opportunity for competitions and everything like that. just, I suppose, reflections on what you've learned over the while, what it's brought you. You know, could you inspire them in any way or give them a bit of advice to keep going, I suppose?
Absolutely, and I think like obviously everyone is different in their own way, but like I think you just have to stick with it. You have to enjoy it, and like obviously as the older you get, the more pressure you have from friends and different things like that, and your social life. And but like if you enjoy it and if it's what you want, you do it for you and not because someone else thinks, oh, you should be off on a night out, or why aren't you playing football in Camogie just because your friends are, whatever. If it's what you want to do, you're not going turning down to the pitch, and it's something that you don't enjoy, so do it for you. And like then for the coaches, like obviously it isn't going to be a straight line the whole ways, and like Shane showed that, like there's, even when he was looking at 2015 and that time I ran a 400, I ran 57 in that 400 in 2015. Like in that 100 I ran 12:45, and like it wasn't a result that was anywhere, but I ran 12:45 after running 11:49 the year before, you know. So like that's a full second slower, and people don't see that, but people need to see it, and everyone has their own story and like the reasons why things don't go well. And like I think there's an awful lot of pressure on athletes in general to perform year after year, and if you don't perform, it's a failure. Like there's many different things that people don't see. Like there was winter of 2017, I had a knee injury, no one knew about it, you know, and like we kept it quiet, and that was like we had to change our program and work different things during that time. So like just stick with it and know that the good days are there and the bad days are there, but you just have to fight through the bad days to get to the good days.
Yeah. And I suppose Shane and Phil, this is a few of the coaches were posed a question before about, is there information that they're looking for that could support their training, like especially in terms of like women in sport. A lot of it kind of came back to like strength and conditioning, and obviously Shane, you spoke about Phil has a great strength capacity, but also you're making her work with the conditioning too, and I suppose the different forms of training. There's a fear, I suppose, with people when they're introducing kind of S&C work to younger athletes and stuff, of when do they start, how do they start, and you offered the advice of obviously get yourself a good S&C and you'll be away. It'll help you big time. You know, I think that depending on some of the clubs here, some of the people that are here, not everyone is very fortunate to have access to tracks and facilities all the time, being able to adapt it. So either, like you said, switching or some of your sessions to the bike and everything like that. Was when did you actually stumble across kind of playing around with the WATTBIKE?
It was when Phil hurt her knee. Well, it was just around the time where we were looking at building her, I suppose, her aerobic capacity, because we knew that she wasn't fit, you know, or could be fitter. And then it was like, okay, we had to do a little bit more because the knee was at her. So it was around that. It was sort of one of those, we stumbled upon it. We knew what we wanted to do. Again, we had a plan, right? So we had an end goal. We want to get fitter. How do we do it? Well, I didn't want to run. I didn't want her to run because A, it was just more on the feet, and then B, it was she had a sore knee. So we but just back to, I hope that answered your question, but just about facilities and having an S&C coach and all that, and I totally agree with you, like that you know, that's not a viable option for a lot of people. But like there's a lot of simple things that can be explored, like medicine balls and, you know, and kettlebells that are safe. And, you know, especially for young developing kids, like you can put in a lot of that med ball power stuff and kettlebell swings, and just, you know, and talk to people, like, you know what I mean? Talk to somebody that does know what they're doing, and say, look, I'm stuck down here and wherever the back of the arms, I don't have access to anything, and they'll help. Like people will be willing to help, and especially put you on the right path as well, you know.
100%. And we have a question here. I suppose it's quite evident that Phil is very mentally strong. I suppose, I know you definitely have your ups and downs, like every athlete does, Phil, but is there anything that you employ to deal with kind of pre-race anxiety? And
I think the post-race anxiety is worse.
For me, I suppose, like, it's just more like routine, and like for me, I would be very organized and say, like, just dealing with say nerves before a race. If you are anxious, like for me, I would lay everything out the night before. I would have everything organized so you're not waking up the morning of a race being anxious naturally, and then like stressing over trying to find things and like where's my spikes, where's my singlet, all these different things. So have everything laid out for me would be a massive thing, and just everything laid out on my notes section of my phone as well, in terms of times, like what time I'm leaving, say if it's a hotel or if it's home, and what time I need to be there for, what time I'm warming up, and have that laid out between heat and final and things like that. And when you come to a bigger race, like I would work with a sports psychologist as well, and I think that is a massive factor. Like you can train all you want, but if the mental side of things isn't right, then you're at a massive downfall as well. So like for me, it's a performance enhancer going to a sports psychologist. Like, and obviously there's a lot of like stigma around it and whatever, and people don't see it for its real benefit, but one thing that she always tells me is like, right, you have your lane, you have your race. It's about executing your race and focus on you. Like if you're letting everyone else get into your head, you're obviously wasting your own energy and you're giving it to them before you even like start racing. You know, like you're already at a loss before the gun even goes. So when it comes to major championships, it's just another race with different marketing. Again, you have your lane, you have your race, you have your certain amount of people in your race, whatever. You have your job to execute, and you have to focus on that, not getting caught up that it's like Europeans or it's nationals or there's television here today or look who's in the stand. Like you have to go out there and execute your race and walk off the track happy, knowing that you've given it your all, not focusing and wasting that energy on everybody else.
And Shane, is that something I suppose you spoke about, kind of having those specific sessions to kind of test Phil, I suppose, obviously not just physically but mentally as well?
Yeah, like I remember before we went to Zurich, it was because we'd never been to. I hadn't been to a major championships 2014. Phil had just been to a European juniors, and I remember them, telling us, look, the call room is at the track, the warm-up track. The warm-up track could be anywhere up to 20-25 minutes of a drive in a minibus to the main stadium. So like straight away we were going like, whoa, this is like, we're not used to this. Like normally it's a 20-minute call room, you're out on the track. So this was like nearly going to be 2 hours beforehand that we were starting to warm up, with a 45-minute gap in there somewhere. So it's not that I'd have to train Phil to be mentally prepared. Maybe it was the periphery stuff. It was the stuff getting mentally prepared for the situation you're facing, right? So every major championships you go to brings with it its own little nuances. So I remember I had a camper van at the time, so we went down to Rosslare and we did a warm up, and we locked Phil in a camper van for 40 minutes to get used to just that delay. So it's more I suppose we would do a lot of mental prep for what is coming up. You know what I mean? If it's like, if we know we want to be good for 3 rounds in Poland, please God, in March, then we will mentally prepare for 3 rounds as well as physically preparing. Do you know what I mean? So Phil has no problem hurting herself when she needs to go to the well. You know what I mean? So it does help to do that work, so that Phil goes there in a 400 type session. A 200 is a piece of cake mentally. Then, like,
of course,
absolutely. Even say like dress rehearsals, in terms of say before we go to major championships, or like say when you go to indoors, we always have the heat and the semi on the same day. So like we necessarily aren't going to replicate that by doing 2 track sessions. There's times where Shane sent me to the gym in the evening and just do a bike session instead, and like have that like we would prepare in the morning as if that was our race, and then I'd go home and I'd recover and then get ready to go again. And it's just like dress rehearsal of going through that, and timings, and just like see how your body responds, and mentally that you have to pick yourself up to go again.
Exactly. And guys, just before we finish up, I know you probably want to get on with your Friday evenings, but I might just leave another minute just in case anybody else has questions. If you want to use your reaction at the bottom, and I'll be able to come to you, or if anybody has any feedback that they want to drop in. There was, Phil, obviously we don't, you're an ambassador for Connecticut, but I suppose there was a question there, just understanding, I suppose, the value of nutrition pre and post competition. Obviously you have to make sure that you're fueled up accordingly to be able to do it. Look, we're not expecting you to go through it today, but just, I suppose, understanding the value of fueling for you, how has it impacted your training and your performance?
Absolutely. And again, it's another massive thing. Like if you think you're away from training more of the day than you are at training, so you need to prepare in terms of your nutrition and your recovery. And like nutrition is a massive like enhancer to all sessions, not just around a race and things like that. So if you're not fueled correctly, you're not getting the most out of your session, or if you're not recovering properly, you're not getting the most out of that session that you have done. So we would have worked with Stevie around the nutrition aspect, and it all comes down to timing for me and getting the meals in at the right time, and it's fuel for the session required. Like if I have a demanding session and it's in the morning, like I would fuel heavy the night before, because I'm not going to be eating a big breakfast the morning of that early session. And then say if it is a later session in the day, say if it's evening time, then breakfast or like midday would be the most important meal there. So but again, it's all about recovery, and it's all about being prepared for that session, whether it's hydration, whether it's food, and then recovering after. Like people get like very caught up in like, or like massage guns, recovery boots, all these kind of things, when like sleep is the best enhancer out of the whole thing, and just focus on that instead of like, oh, I need to train harder, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to explore this avenue. Just explore your sleep and work on that so that you are recovered and you are prepared for the next session.
Brilliant. Thank you, Phil. One final question, Shane, for you. You spoke about the importance of a tribe, creating obviously strong cultures and everything like that. You have a fantastic network of coaches around you. One thing, just if people are, even have a bit more time and might do a bit of reading, and is there any resources or recommended reading that you would recommend to some of our aspiring coaches that are here today?
I suppose that's a minefield. I suppose there's so much out there, and the internet, I suppose, for anything that you read, again, for one approach, there's another thing you'll read that goes against it. I think there's some sound basic principle books out there. I think there's a Sprints and Hurdles one by Ralph Mann that gives you basically the technical model. It doesn't tell you how to get there, but it kind of lays out the technical model of sprints and hurdles. I think there's some good stuff on the Altus website. I think there's a lot of stuff on the Altus website, but if you can kind of dig enough through it, there's good courses out there. What I think is lacking, I suppose, is, and I think this is where people struggle with, is around just energy system work, like just the, when you start having to go into kind of, specific 200, 400 meter type work, just how you get there, because there's many ways to roam. And I don't think necessarily that's something that you can read on. I think it's more about networking with people and talking to other coaches and what they do, and talking to coaches that have had success in the past. And I don't, by no means do I mean me. I mean, I've harassed plenty of coaches in the past, and I think that's where you learn the most. I think it's just talking to people, and then they will tell you, they will say, oh, here, look at this, or like that. I don't know if I have anything specific, that I could point people to, but I would say understand the technical model and find it, like just research energy systems. At what point does one shut down and another one kicks in? Like there's really only 3 of them, right? So then there's charts out there to say, well, this is the distance that you need to cover, and this is the amount of reps that you need to do. And that's not necessarily the starting point for your athlete, but at least you have somewhere to go then, okay? So I don't know, there's plenty of coaches.
Embrace everyone and everything, basically.
Yeah, and I'm just looking out there, there's a lot of really good coaches out here that probably have the answers that I'm struggling to throw out here, but no, yeah, that's it. I mean, like just talk to people and understand the technical and the energy system models, and you can't go far wrong.
100%. So guys, I'm going to leave you because we want you to go off and soak up all the information that you have learned from this evening. But we hope that you enjoyed it and that you took plenty of information from it, and that you will be able to bring back some of your learnings to your groups and your athletes and in clubs. I wish you all the very, very best of luck over the next few weeks and months. I know it's very, very difficult for everyone at the moment, but there are people out there to help you. There's some lovely coaches on this meeting in particular as well that would only be delighted to share and row in with one another for a little bit of moral support. So don't be afraid to extend the hand, and we'll all work together, and hopefully we'll all see each other on a lovely track or a cross-country field, if that's what you're into, along the way at some stage. But thank you very much for tuning in, and hopefully we will get to see each other soon.
Thanks, Leanne.
Thanks a million, Shane. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you. Thanks a million.
Thanks for everything.